hi everybody who is out there who is joining us. In case you guys are new to Murder by the Book, hi, I am John. I am the event coordinator at the store. We're so excited to be able to do this. We were supposed to be hosting the event in store this evening, and clearly that's not happening with everything going on. So we're really excited that we're able to do this. And we're also really thankful to Riley and Abby for being our guinea pigs for our first ticketed Zoom event. So thank you guys so much. Just a quick couple things about Murder by the Book. We are one of the country's oldest and largest crime fiction bookstores. We're gonna be celebrating our 40th anniversary in August. Yeah, we would typically, when there's not a pandemic happening, would host 3 to 5 author events a week. We've hosted Riley. This would technically be our 3rd event with him. We're all huge fans of the series. We've got a lot of great virtual stuff coming up. We've got our fingers crossed for something with Ruth Ware in September, so definitely keep an eye out for that. S.J. Watson, Julie Clark, so you can visit our website, which is murderbooks.com, and get some more information for that. If you guys have any questions while Riley and Abby are chatting, pop them in the chat box below. I'll be monitoring it and copying them down, so that way when they are done chatting, I will pop back on and we'll relay some of those questions for you. So as we get started, so Abby Endler has been a crime fiction fan ever since she discovered her mom's childhood collection of Nancy Drew books. She's been exploring the best and worst in crime fiction ever since. Now a 20-something working in publishing, she decided to put this love of mysteries to good use. Her blog, Crime by the Book, is the result of her ongoing exploration of crime fiction from around the world. And Home Before Dark is the 4th thriller from Riley Sager, the pseudonym of an author who lives in Princetown, New Jersey. His first novel, Final Girls, was a national and international bestseller that has been published in more than 24 countries and won the Hgtv Thriller Award for Best Hardcover Novel. His subsequent novels, The Last Time I Lied, Lock Every Door, were all New York Times bestsellers. Every one of them has made one of our staff members' top 10 lists of the year. We're such big fans of all of these. We're so excited to be able to do this with you guys tonight. How are y'all doing?
Great.
Happy to be here.
Having us.
Yeah, thank you.
It sucks that we can't be there in person, but
yeah.
The silver lining is what I saw people saying in the chat. It's so nice that people from all across the country can tune into this. So thank you guys for doing it over Zoom.
Our pleasure.
Yes.
We're really hoping that we're going to be able to do some more stuff like this kind of going forward in the future too. Also wanted to mention really quick, since you guys all have ordered signed copies from us, we started getting them in today. We got 2 boxes. The rest of them are scheduled to come in tomorrow. So we will be busy packing, and you'll be getting emails with shipping info soon. And Riley, thank you so much for signing and personalizing those for us. That I know that was a daunting task, but we really appreciate it.
no, it was a lot of fun. I mean, by the end, my arm was just like, but other than that, it was fun.
Awesome. So I am going to pop away and let you guys chat, and I will see you in a little bit. Y'all have fun.
Thanks, John. All right, Riley. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Like, cheers to Home Before Dark. So lame. I really missed the memo. But I'm so excited that we were able to chat about this amazing book. And I have to tell you, this is my favorite book of yours yet. And I'm so excited. I have 3 pages worth of questions for you here. And I'm guessing we're not going to have time to go through all of them. But to dive in, I wonder if you could just tell us, what is Home Before Dark about?
So Home Before Dark is about a woman named Maggie who went through a very Amityville horror type situation. You know, when she was 5 years old, her family moved into this creepy house with a history in Vermont called Bainbury Hall. They experienced some scary things and they moved out 20 days later in the middle of the night. Well, they didn't even move out. They just up and left.
They ran screaming from that house.
And her father, Maggie's father, Ewan, wrote a book about it called House of Horrors that became this massive international bestseller and this phenomenon on a par with the Amityville horror. And so Maggie has lived in the shadow of this book her entire life. And she really doesn't like it because she thinks it was all made up, because she has no memories of this. And you'd think, if I'm living in a big creepy house and it was haunted and we had to flee in the middle of the night, I would remember some of that, and she does not.
Yeah.
So it's 25 years later, her father passes away, and she inherits Bainbury Hall, the name of the house. And this is kind of a surprise because she didn't know her father still owned it. And so she is a house flipper by trade. So she returns ostensibly to finish the house and sell it, but really just to like find out why her family really, really left and get to the truth of this story that's been following her entire life. And soon she starts to experience scary things right out of her father's book that makes her think that what he wrote was maybe possibly true. And I know you're probably going to say that it's a book within a book.
Yes.
So it is her story, her return to the house and everything that happens there, and literally the entire text of the book her father wrote. And
It's
the
incredible.
chapters are alternating between her story and his story. And yeah, it's complex.
It's complex, and we're going to get to, I have like multiple questions about your writing process and how you actually constructed this book, but I'm going to save those two a little later if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So something that I know I always love about your books, and many other readers do as well, is that they always have a little bit of a nod to horror movies. You're a huge horror fan. I'm a huge horror movie fan as well. And I wondered if you could share with us, what was the inspiration for Home Before Dark? And is there another like horror movie connection in this book as well?
Oh, there are plenty, yeah. I mean, the main inspiration was the Amityville Horror itself. And I got the idea while listening to a wonderful podcast called Stuff You Should Know. And they do different topics every episode. Like it could be about like, one episode is hippos, the other episode is about like the periodic table, or, and
yeah,
they did one on the Amityville Horror and the history of the house, but also just maybe the rationale, because everyone thinks like this family made it up. Like there's no way this kind of insanity could have happened. I mean, there are demon pigs involved. Like it's that bizarre.
Yeah.
But they swore until their deaths that it was true. And so the big question is, why would they do that?
Yeah.
And so while listening to this, I sort of got this idea of like, well, that's a very interesting question to ask. Why would they do this? And it would be even more interesting if it was one of their children asking this question. And
absolutely.
What would it be like for this person to live with this book that has defined their entire life? And then what if they go back and and so it was this whole set of what ifs building on top of each other until I was like, yeah, this is I guess my next book.
Amazing. And you mentioned the children and how important it is that Maggie is like the daughter who's been living with this book for her whole life. And I loved Maggie. I think a lot of your readers are also obsessed with your books for their protagonists. Each book has a very distinctive protagonist who has their own kind of like relatable qualities, even in the midst of some pretty like crazy and creepy situations. And I thought Maggie was just the perfect guide to take readers through this story. And I wonder if you could kind of introduce Maggie to people who haven't dug into the book yet. Who is she and how would you describe her to someone?
I really like Maggie too, because I didn't want, I mean, a lot of my past protagonists have been damaged in some way, and they're vulnerable in some way. And, they still find this strength to like fight back.
Yeah.
And I love when they, that's one of my favorite parts of writing, when like they do find the strength to just be like, and, like Jules and lock every door.
Yeah.
And I wanted someone different from them. I wanted someone who was already strong. She knows her strength. She's not vulnerable.
Yeah.
On the out, like she is, but outwardly she's not. That I wanted someone who just would march into this house completely unafraid and completely skeptical.
Yeah.
Because I thought that it would be so boring to have like this meek, frightened girl like just enter the house and be like, oh, I'm scared. It's like, no, I want her to come in like with a sledgehammer, ready to like rip down some walls and, put up some new wallpaper and be like, there's no ghost here. I'm reselling this place. I'm going to make a profit. And that's when she starts to experience scary things, makes it even more frightening.
100%.
Because if someone who's like, I don't believe any of this, when she starts to maybe believe is when you're like, oh man, this could all be real.
100%. And that actually ties perfectly into my next question, because one of the things I loved about Maggie so much, aside from her strength, is the fact that she is like the ultimate skeptic. She does not believe a word of what her dad has written. And I was so curious while I was reading the book, and you may have already answered this a little bit, but I was so curious while I was reading the book, you know, why make Maggie a skeptic? Why not make Maggie like a young woman who's like a ghost hunter going back to the house to, you know, in hopes of seeing what her dad wrote about?
I originally, like when I first came up with the idea, I was thinking, you know, oh, maybe she gets invited by one of these ghost hunting shows to return. Ooh, or maybe something, but it always seemed like it would be reluctantly on her behalf. Yeah. And I wanted her to really have agency. I wanted her to, like, you know, her father on his deathbed is like, never go back there. Mm-hmm. And her mother is like, oh, we'll just buy the house from you and you never have to return. Ha ha ha, no big deal. And it's like, yeah. So she's going back there of her own volition because she really wants to find out the truth.
Yeah.
And I thought that that was a better angle to come from. And, you know, being a house flipper seemed like a great, easy way into a house. You know, she doesn't need to hire someone. She does this for a living. Yeah. And so it is no big deal for her to march into an old house and look around and be like, yep, I'm going to do that and take that down and change this around. And it just made for, I think, a much more interesting character and interesting story.
Yeah.
And it's funny when I say like Maggie isn't vulnerable. I mean, she is, in the sense that she always thinks that her, you know, her family lied to her.
Yeah.
And she loves her father and she loves her mother, but there's just whole mess of emotions where she doesn't completely trust them.
Yeah.
She doesn't completely believe them.
Yeah.
And so that was something, that was like one of the more difficult things, is to try to like layer in this sort of vulnerability and, you know, really get at the prickly, complex relationship she had with her father.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's grieving. I mean, that was another thing. Yeah. Like, he just died. So she's also like, she's grieving for this man that she thinks she didn't really know and who she thinks didn't really know her as well.
Yeah.
And so it got really surprisingly complicated, like emotionally. Like I was ready to go in and be like, ghosts, houses, but then in the rewriting process it was, wow, this is getting this is deeper than I thought, man.
Yeah, no, and that, like, while I was reading it, I had the same reaction. Like, I went into this book thinking, okay, like, haunted house story, ghosts, here we go, give me the good scares. And I got the good scares for sure, but I loved the way that this story actually is. There's like the ghost story piece of it, but that is kind of inextricably linked to this family mystery and this idea of this young woman who's trying to figure out what really is her family legacy and how should she feel about what her dad has done, you know, either to their family or for their family, depending how you look at it. And I was so curious, like, this might be hard to answer, but what inspired you to really dig into those family relationships? And what was it like getting in the heads of those characters?
It really was just like, it came about just from the writing of it. Like, just some things just happen when you're writing, and, you know, you have it all outlined, so you have the whole plot thing, but then you do have to do some, you know, filling in the blanks when you're writing to get like their thoughts.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things, and it really came very late in the editing process, like it was, I mean, I don't know if Maya, my editor, is watching. Hi, Maya, if you're watching. But like, we were really deep in the editing process and very close to deadline. Yeah. And there was just something not quite right with like Maggie's journey. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and she was sort of suggesting one direction, and I was like pushing in another direction. And it finally hit me, like, in literally like the middle of the night, and I was like, that's what it is. It's Maggie's struggling to figure out who she is, because we see Maggie as an adult, we see Maggie as a 5-year-old in her father's book, we see how people react to Maggie when they meet her based on her father's book. And so the question became like, who is Maggie?
Yeah.
And that's what she's trying to figure out. And that's where part of the betrayal from her father lies. Like she's read her father's book and she sees this person that she does not recognize at all.
Yeah.
And she thinks, like, is that what my father thought of me? Is that, you know, and so it really, that's when I finally captured it. And like, just going back through the book, I was really, you know, there were parts that I realized I'd been putting that in all along.
Yeah.
Didn't quite like make it gel.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And it was very weird to go back and like, yeah, I was on this track the whole entire time.
Yeah.
And I just need to do a little bit more and we're there.
That's so interesting. I love that. And I really loved how, like I said, I loved this dive into these family relationships. And I wonder if, you know, before we get into House of Horrors and what that is, or actually you could tell us, you know, what is House of Horrors, just to reiterate for people. And then like, who is Ewan Holt? Because he actually becomes kind of a secondary narrator in this story. And I wonder if you could just set the scene for people.
So House of Horrors is the book that her father wrote, and I mean we go all in. Like I'm trying to.
Oh yeah.
Can you show the title page of the, because like mine, I think my camera makes it reverse.
Let me see. Find it here. Okay, so first obviously we have, you can see Home Before Dark. Then look at this. Can you guys see that okay? Amazing.
And a little, if you can hold it up again.
Oh, yeah.
There's a little tidbit. Like this is something, I mean, I'm even reluctant to like point it out because I wish that some people would, but the name of the publisher is the guy who played the mayor in Jaws, Murray Hamilton.
You're kidding me.
It just sounded like a perfect publisher name from like the 90s.
Wait, that's incredible.
So that's my little Jaws reference.
That's amazing. I did not notice that. That's incredible. Murray Hamilton Inc. I love it. No, you guys went all in with this book within a book thing, but sorry. Please continue.
So, but yeah, we really did. And like, I put that in like in the manuscript, I put in like a title page, and just because I really wanted, you know, to show like, this is going to be a complete book, literally inside this book.
Yeah.
And so we got way off track. What was your question again?
My question was just to kind of explain to people what exactly is House of Horrors, and then just kind of tell them a little bit about Ewan Holt, because he's kind of second narrator here. Yeah,
so Ewan was like, I knew that like there would have to be a lot of House of Horrors for Maggie's story to make sense. And so like when I was first conceived the idea, I'm like, oh, I guess we could have excerpts, or we could have, but it just really made sense to have the entire book because it would solve so many narrative problems. Yeah. One, it would be the exposition. So when Maggie enters that house, you don't need to tour the house because you've already toured the house when Ewan and his wife toured the house in his book. Two, it's the flashback structure that I use in most of my books, but just a different twist on it.
Yeah.
And three, it is absolutely the unreliable narrator in this thing.
Yes.
So instead of a person who's like an unreliable narrator, it's like a book within the book. That's the unreliable narrator. And I just was very proud of myself when I came up with that. I'm like, oh, yeah, that could really, really work. And so Ewan, you know, it's interesting because like you don't get to really know him other than Maggie's memories and what he writes in the book, and the knowledge of that everything in this book might be a lie. So he's a very unreadable character, and it was a very interesting book to write, this book within the book, because I was able to blatantly steal from other things because, you know, he wrote this in 1995. Other things came before it.
Yeah.
It could be very derivative of other things on purpose.
Yeah.
And so that was really like a fun way to be like, I'm going to completely rip off a scene from The Haunting of Hill House, and it will be okay because I'm not doing it. The character Ewan is doing it.
I love it. It's amazing. And I was so curious. I mean, I'm sure that there are tons of people watching this right now who are wondering, what on earth was the actual writing process like? I mean, when you decided you needed this book within a book structure, what was your first step? Did you write all of House of Horrors in one go, all of Maggie's stories in one go, and then intersperse them? How did that work?
Well, it's funny. They were like, how did you write this book? How hard? It was like, do you see me drinking right now? I'm still like, no, it was so hard. When I came up with the idea, I was like, this is going to be cool. It's going to be fun. I'm going to do like 2 books in one, and it's going to be, and in your mind, like, oh, that sounds great. Actually doing it was just so difficult.
Oh my
and
God.
I didn't quite realize that until it was way too late in the game, where, you know, I had already told like my publisher, like, this is my next book. You'll have it summer 2020. And yeah, and it just, so like there was no retreating from this. It was like I had to do this.
Yeah.
And so it was then figuring out like, how do I do it?
Yeah.
Without going insane. And I didn't succeed. I went insane. It was, originally I was going to write House of Horrors first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going to craft Maggie's return to the house based around the original book. But then I realized super early that they're so intertwined. Like,
yeah.
So utterly, like, I like them. They're like cogs in a machine. Like,
they
just
are. That's perfect.
Up.
Yeah.
And they had to match up perfectly.
Yeah.
In some areas.
Yeah.
And so I realized, like, one, I needed to outline the heck out of this thing. And I did, like, months of outlining. But also, like, I needed to write them pretty much simultaneously.
Oh.
And so
hard.
That was very, very hard at first.
Yeah.
It's always weird when I'm writing a book. I always get, struggle to get the character's voice. And like, I literally mean their voice. Like, it's a weird thing where, I mean, it sounds kind of like method actory, but like, I hear their voice in my head.
Wow.
And so, like, oh, I hear noise.
Oh, I hear some sound.
Oh, okay. But so, like, like,
the microphone stopped working.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Can't hear anything.
Can you just make sure that you're muted, please? Thank you.
But so, like, Quincy has a different voice from Emma, who has a different voice from Jules. And so, like, in this one, I'm like, oh, I need 2 voices? I need to hear 2 voices? Well, that sucks. But once you get, you do, and once you write in their voice enough,
yeah,
it sort of becomes second nature to switch back and forth. And so by the end, I was able to just sort of cruise through. Like, one minute I'd put on my Maggie hat and, write her, and then I'd be like, oh, got it. Switch, and okay, Ewan hat, here we go. And so, yeah, it just became very easy by the end.
Wow, that's amazing. And it worked. I mean, literally, the next question I was going to ask you was, how did you differentiate their voices? Because I felt as a reader, their voices were so distinct that, like, it wouldn't matter if I, say I didn't know somehow that I was reading a House of Horrors or chapter, which I absolutely did. But, like, it wouldn't matter because I would know I was listening to Ewan speak. And I was so impressed with the way you handled their voices. I think it worked beautifully. So all of your going insane to try to make this happen paid off. It really delivers.
Thank you. I tried to give Ewan like make him a little bit pompous.
Oh.
Yeah, just a tad, like he fancies himself like a writer, like he wants to write the great American novel, and there's a little bit of like failed novelist in his voice.
I love it. It works.
Maggie's a little, like, I'm done with this stuff.
Yeah, Maggie's so done with
scared. This. And then she's like, I can't believe I'm scared of this stuff. So.
Mm-hmm. And now we have to talk about the scares in this book because they are so effective. And I was wondering, when you're writing a scary scene, because I think of all your books, for me as a reader, Home Before Dark had the most scares of any of your books so far, which
Totally. Yes.
like, I'm
yes.
completely, that's a compliment. I loved it. But I was wondering, where do you get the ideas for these scary moments? And like, are you writing about things that you yourself are afraid of?
Well, with the, I knew that all the scares would have to be in House of Horrors.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would like seep into Maggie's story.
Right. Yeah.
And so I knew House of Horrors would have to be very effective as a scare
Mm-hmm.
machine. And so I just really tried to, I stole from things, like I stole from Hill House. I did read The Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
And I did watch the Netflix Haunting of Hill House because I knew there were similarities there, and I wanted to avoid accident. I didn't want to be like, oh, we have the same type of ghost. That's
right.
Sucky. So I just watched those and read those to know what to avoid, and then what I could sort of play with and lean into and do like the stereotypical haunted house stuff. And so there is the Ouija board. And there are like the creepy ghosts with the creepy names, like Mr. Shadow and Miss Pennyface.
Oh, it's so good.
But another thing was, I was very conscious, and this was another challenge that I inadvertently created for myself, is that House of Horrors was a worldwide bestseller in 1995. And I needed some scenes that would sort of justify this kind of attention that this book got. And so I needed to be like, okay, some of these scenes have to be huge. Yeah. And they have to be terrifying.
And they have to be like sticky in the way that and you did this, like in the way, and we've talked about this before in our favorite horror movies, there are those iconic moments that a viewer of that movie is gonna remember. And this book has the bookish equivalent of those kind of moments. You like nailed that.
Right, that would seep into the public's consciousness, even if they hadn't read the book or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a challenge to be like, okay, it needed to be like a little bit epic in terms of these things. And so I came up with like 3 really good epic scenes. Well, I mean, one's like a continuous, the
best one.
But, there are 2 other scenes that like just stick with people.
Totally.
And I love it when people like, make reference to them. Like someone posted an Instagram picture today, like based on one of them.
Amazing.
And I was like, oh wow, you went there with this picture. You really did. And it's amazing. Yes.
That's incredible. I have to find that picture when this is done. That's amazing.
So it's cool to see like this response to these scenes are, hopefully what the response would have been like had House of Horrors been a real book.
Yeah, absolutely. And this might be a very silly question, but I was super curious. I mean, this book seriously creeped me out to read it. Were you ever creeped out writing this book?
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I guess we can say it's pretty, there are snakes.
There are snakes. That's all we'll say.
I do not like snakes. I hate snakes. And so researching what snake is, in Vermont that could be a good snake in this house. And so Googling snakes and looking at snake pictures and just be like,
creepy.
I don't want to,
creepy.
So that whole scene was just like way hard to write. It was just, it was super, super hard to write.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you suffered through it because it's super effective to read.
Yeah, so it really was, it was tough. And just the atmosphere of it. Like I would write a lot at night.
Yeah.
So I'd be in this very room, dark outside the windows, dim light, and, I'd hear a sound and be like, what was that? And then I'd settle back down and I'd hear it again and be like, what? And I mean, and this house makes a lot of just random noises. Like we joke, like you'll hear just like this sudden like creak somewhere. It's like random noise. Hi.
Like There it goes again. And yet you still say you don't believe in ghosts, correct?
I do not, no.
I mean, man, I would have thought writing this book would change your mind.
No, because it's fiction.
I guess.
No, well, like I said, like I don't believe in ghosts, yet they frighten me anyway. So
Yes, totally. Yeah, I see Aaron in the chat says he just says that so he doesn't get scared. Yes, Aaron, I think you're right about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other thing we have to talk about before our time here comes to an end and we open it up for audience Q&A is the setting of this story. And I could talk about the setting forever because I am a reader who loves when the setting of a book almost becomes a character itself. And I think that that's what you give readers with Bainbury Hall. And I would love if you could just describe Bainbury Hall for folks. And also, I mean, maybe you could just share if it's based off of a real place you visited.
So Bainbury Hall is this big old Victorian house on top of a hill. Yes, it is a hill house. And it's surrounded by woods and, you know, in the woods there may or may not be a graveyard and who knows. And I just I wanted to do the opposite of Amityville.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because Amityville was very suburban, and I think it would have been so easy to sort of be like, yeah, I'm gonna, like with Poltergeist, you know, like, oh, here we are in suburbia, and I wanted to kind of go like more gothic.
Yeah.
And so just this idea of this big house on a hill, the sort of classic gothic haunted house. And as far as like the, you know, its architecture, it's not based on any particular house. I mean, I stole some of the history from a bed and breakfast we stayed in Vermont, and it was a big old house on top of a hill. Yeah. And I believe it had once been owned by RKO. And so like movie stars had stayed there.
Amazing.
And so I was like, I'm totally stealing this for my book and making it part of the history of Bainbury Hall, because I think that's so glamorous to have like 30s movie stars like
totally. Yeah.
But, you know, as far as like the actual architecture, I just pulled from every, you know, different thing. Like on the third floor, there are windows that look like eyes. That is absolutely taken from the Amityville Horror and those iconic windows. Yeah. And some of it, I just thought it would be neat to be like, oh, this room I want to have this, and this room I want to have this. And in other ways, it was just the plot made certain things necessary. Like, you know, the placement of the kitchen had to be where it is. And the room above it had to be where it is. And so, like, certain rooms had to be exactly like they were. Yeah. And, you know, like...
map it out when you were, so that you kept everything straight? Did you have any sort of, like, diagram of how the house was laid?
A very, very crude diagram. Yeah. Like, I did the same thing for Lock Every Door, too. Like, the apartment. Like, very, like... 5-year-old line drawings and just, like, a fireplace. And then, like, you know... sitting room written down. So it'd be like a clue board, except
I love it.
by someone who can't draw at all.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, it works so well, and I love the way, I mean, when you were saying earlier about how House of Horrors becomes this unreliable narrator, I felt like the house is a little bit unreliable as well, which sounds kind of weird, but I mean, that house has so many secrets inside of its walls and so many things that it's hiding, and it is so much fun to watch Maggie kind of like inadvertently stumble upon all of them. It's incredible.
Thank you. And how Ewan's book like pulls back all these layers in the house. Yes. And Maggie knows about all of them when she's inside, when as soon as she steps in the door. And it was a challenge to write. It was fun to write. It was exhausting to write. It was like all of the things in one. Like every book has been a different experience, and this was definitely an experience.
Well, it is such an incredible read. And like you said earlier about the cogs and the pieces of this story fitting together, I feel like that was probably what I loved most about it. You're just completely immersed in this world, and watching the interplay of like Maggie's present day experience with the House of Horrors story, nonfiction account, I should say, is just, it's so good and just, it's incredible. Congratulations. I like really cannot wait for everyone to get their copies of Home Before Dark because it is amazing.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know if we want to open it up to audience Q&A now. I could keep talking forever, but I feel like I've been talking for about 30 minutes here.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, I could listen to you guys talk forever too. We've got some good crowd questions too. So the first one is actually for both of you. Aaron asks, if you could only read one book for the rest of your life, and what would you read?
That is can we say Home Before Dark by Riley Sager?
I wouldn't want to read that on the rest of my life.
I love it. Oh my gosh, Riley, do you want to answer first?
I can't. I'm going to say it would be one of those like Reader's Digest compilations. So it would be like 10 books in one.
That's cheating, but I like it.
One of them would be like, would include like The Great Gatsby and The Catcher in the Rye and The Secret History. So that's what I would, yeah.
That's a
It'd be
great
a compendium
answer.
of Riley's favorite books is what I
I
would do.
love that. I would probably pick, if it were one book for the rest of my life, I would probably go with something nostalgic. Like, I mean, Agatha Christie was like one of the authors that, you know, really got me into adult mysteries. So I think I would probably pick maybe And Then There Were None, because I feel like I can read that book over and over again. And I always marvel at different, you know, plot points in that story. It's an amazing one.
I found that And Then There Were None is like the gateway drug to thrillers.
It is, right?
It really is.
Like every time that I say that to anyone or post about it on social media, I hear from so many people that they've had the exact same experience.
I read that when I was in 7th grade and I was a goner.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's incredible.
McKenna's watching, and she yes, with like 3 exclamation points, all caps, so she agrees too. Confession, just read And Then There Were None for the first time like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and what was really cool about it was that you could just see how like she created just like so much stuff that like you're like, okay, yeah, this is where this person got this from. This is
yes.
Where I kind of consider it the first psychological thriller.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I would also highly recommend her book Endless Night, which I think sometimes gets kind of forgotten, but it really is like a domestic thriller, just an old school one. It's incredible.
Oh, okay.
Cassandra asks, Riley, do you read every day?
I do not, because sometimes I try not to read a lot when I'm writing for various reasons. Sometimes I'm just too damn busy, or I don't want to get like another author's voice in my head, and I don't want to. And sometimes it just makes me feel bad. Like if I read something that's really good, it has the opposite effect. Like some people are like, oh, I'm inspired by really amazing writing. I just feel like crap. So I really tend not to try to read a lot. If I do read anything when I'm really involved in finishing a book, it would be like nonfiction, because I know that like it has nothing to do with what I'm writing. But then when I'm done with a book and then can go hog wild, it's like, yes, give me all of the books.
Garrett asks, was there any girl in a horror movie that inspired Maggie?
That inspired Maggie?
Yeah.
No, Maggie was totally inspired by the women on HGTV. Like not one particular one, like all of them. Like I just wanted to be, because you see them, they're you know, they're pretty, they're sassy, they have their tool belts, they have their sledgehammer, and they do great work, and so I just really wanted Maggie to be like them.
What's your favorite HGTV show?
Oh gosh,
I
am a fan of Love It or List It.
Oh, so good. Me too. Oh my gosh.
And I really do like Hometown.
I haven't seen that one.
It's good.
Adding it to the list.
Katie asked, and a couple of people have asked, this also kind of rolls into Kevin's question, how do you write such amazing, strong female characters, and why did you choose to write from the female POV?
It all started with Final Girls. And that was really, like, I didn't intend to do this. It just was final girls is the trope. Like, it's a final girl. And I joked that, like, had the movie trope been final boys, my career would be very, very different. But I just knew, okay, it's a final girl. I have to write it from the point of view of a young woman. And that didn't deter me at all. Like, I didn't really think twice. I knew Quincy like the back of my hand. Like, I just knew her from the moment I thought of her. I knew exactly what she was feeling and what she was going through. And so I just, wrote her. Like, it's hard to explain, but like, I knew her. And so it just all came out on the page that way. And I just realized I kind of have a knack for this. And I think part of it, and I don't want to like talk down other writers, and I won't name names, but like some men writing like first person narration of women tend to focus on the wrong things. Like, there's a lot of attention paid to hair and boobs, and it's like, no, like, that's like, I joked with at Thriller Fest last year. I was hanging out with Wendy Hurd and Lane Fargo, who are just awesome and hysterical, and we were discussing the same thing, and they're like, yeah, we don't think about our boobs that much. We really don't. And so I tend to think of them like not as women, but characters. Like, like, it's not like, how would a woman react in this situation? It's, how would this specific person react in this situation based on her past and her feelings and her knowledge. And so I think that does come through in the writing, that I'm not like talking down at all.
Yeah, and that the people too. Like, Maggie as a person, Quincy as a person. I think that comes through in the way you write about them.
I think that's where like a lot of authors sometimes get lost. Like, there is obviously, and there should be, a push for authentic voices. But also sometimes I'm like, if you know the character, then it shouldn't be an issue. Mm-hmm. So like, I think that's, it all comes down to characters and knowing them well and bringing that onto the page.
Laura and Kelly both had similar questions. Do you have a favorite thriller or horror book, and who is your favorite author? I'd love to hear your answer for this too, Abby.
My favorite author is, probably Stephen King. He's been very good to me. And I do like, there was a period probably between like, 14 and 17 where I just read all of the big ones, The Shining and Pet Sematary and Misery. But ironically, my favorite book by him is The Green Mile. And I loved how it was released in like these little installments. And I remember like, this is how obsessed I was with The Green Mile. When it came time for the 6th installment, the day it came out, I was at Penn State at the time. I was in college, and yeah, I'm dating myself. And I went to like the closest bookstore. It was like, hi, do you have part 6 of The Green Mile? And this bookstore employee said, oh, that's not out yet. And I knew it was. And I was like, liar! And then I went to like another bookstore and bought it. I was that obsessed with it.
That's amazing. I love that.
As far as my favorite, oh gosh, I don't know if I guess it counts as a thriller, maybe The Secret History. It's more literary than thriller, but there's definitely.
Yeah. Well, my favorite author is Jo Nesbø, the Norwegian crime writer. I just love him so much. And when I kind of discovered his work, I feel like it was kind of like a pivotal coming of age moment for me as a crime reader. And I just fell in love with his depiction of Norway. And I've since just become completely obsessed with his work and all things Norway, as you guys know.
And him, she's obsessed with him.
It's fine. It's not creepy, okay? And second part of the question was just favorite thriller. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say, I mean, his book, The Snowman, is my favorite thriller. I think I could reread that book endlessly and never get tired of it.
I must read that.
You haven't read that yet?
I have not read it yet.
Okay.
I know I do this all the time with you in movies. Like, I can't believe you haven't seen that. And
Wait a second.
Yeah,
this is my moment. It's okay. You'll read it soon. It's great.
Callie wants to know, Riley, if you have one of your characters that you relate to the most.
Oof. I relate to all of them on some level. And I think this answer disturbs a lot of people because of what she goes through and what she is, but Quincy, totally Quincy. And not that like we experienced remotely the same things at all, but I came up with Quincy when everything for me was just crap. Like literally everything about my life was crap. And I was so angry about it. But I had to pretend that I wasn't angry about it. And so when it came time to write, I was like, I'm going to write about this final girl, and she went through horrible stuff, but she's pretending everything is fine, and deep down inside, she's a hot mess. And so I absolutely 100% related to that. And so like a lot of Quincy's just rage boiling beneath this kind of placid, hey, I'm baking surface. That was totally me. Yeah. I'm over it
now. Julie wants to know, when you start a book, do you have an idea of how big your cast is going to be?
I think the first part of that question cut out.
So when you start writing, do you have an idea how big the cast for a book is going to be?
Not really. It's sometimes a matter of necessity, where you just have to think, okay, I want some of these people to be suspects, red herrings, and sometimes it changes. Like the last time I lied was such a strange, bizarro like editing process where like big chunks of the book were being rewritten. And so there were characters like snuck in there and other characters completely pulled out. And so it really depends on, how big I want to go. Like I knew with Home Before Dark, there needed to be the core cast of the family and like the immediate neighbors, but then it became, well, maybe it would be good to have a reporter snooping around there, both in the present and the past. And maybe it would be good to have, someone else, just the police chief. And so it really depends on what's needed for the story.
And Alexa asks if you have a time of day that's better for you for writing.
I do not. Sometimes it's like, I know I did an event with Megan Miranda last night, and she talked about how she has like the strict writing time. Like she writes from here to here, and I have like whenever I need to get stuff done. So sometimes it is like, normally it's in the afternoon. Like when things are normal and the world is not on fire, like I would, maybe go to the gym a couple times in the morning, or, like go to the grocery store in the morning, and then the afternoons spend working. And then sometimes, like if I'm really on deadline, it will be, from 9 a.m. until 1 a.m. I'll be working. So it really varies on like, how much time I have left, how well I'm doing, things like that.
So Adele just asked in the chat if there's anywhere they can watch last night's event. If the Poison Pens events are like ours, if they stream through Facebook, usually you should just be able to go to their Facebook page and watch.
Yeah, go to Poison Pen, and it's on. I think it'll be on YouTube as well. I think they do that. Yeah.
And if you guys tuned into ours late, if you missed any part of it, probably in about a week or so, we'll get it uploaded to the Murder by the Book YouTube channel, so you'll be able to catch it there as well. Couple of process questions. Kelly wants to know if there was a part of Home Before Dark that was harder to write, either Maggie's story or House of Horrors, and did you write them side by side, or did you just write one and then write the other?
Well, yeah, I did them side by side together. I think like the hardest thing to write was kind of like the middle sections are always tough. Like it's great it's easy to come up with like a good beginning and, inciting action and things like that. And, endings are great because when you get to about like 100 pages left of the book, it's just like this ball rolling down the hill, picking up steam, and you just tend to go fast, 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 and it just happens. It's the middle where you're like, I don't know if this is working. You don't want it to ever drag. And so with this one, it really was like, okay, what is going to take place in both Ewan's book and Maggie's story in the middle of these tales so it does not drag? And so figuring that out was a bit hard.
Ashley asked, and as my own aside, she says that one of her favorite things about your books is the twist, and that's one of my favorite things too. But what I love about yours is that the twist is coming, and it's probably not going to be a paranormal thing. So I'm always interested to see like how you're going to twist it, to see kind of how it's going to fit or what you're going to do to kind of twist that trope. So she was wondering how you come up with the twist every time. Do you know it when you start, or does it kind of happen as you're writing the book?
Well, it's really difficult. Like whenever I read a book with a great twist, I just want to like applaud, just like drop the book, stand up and applaud, because it is really, really hard to try to come up with something that, one, has never been done before, and two, like that you do not see coming. And the hardest part of being an author is we know what's coming. And so it always seems obvious. At least to me it does when I'm writing a book, because I do always come up with a twist beforehand. Like I do like to know where I'm going at all times. I am an outliner through and through. And so when I start a book, I know pretty much how it's going to end and what that twist is. And so trying to lead up to it. But because I know it, I always think that like every red herring I put in or every clue I bury, that there's just like this big neon arrow blinking, like, here it is, here it is, here it is, you'll see this. And every single book I've written, there's been moments like that where I'm like, everyone is going to know exactly what I'm doing here, and I'm just a failure. So it always amazes me when people are like, your twists are great, I never saw it coming. So that's the hardest part is like, I would love to just be able to surprise myself, to get to the end of the book and be like, oh, it's going to be this. Surprise. But I just don't write that way.
So as a reader then, are you trying to figure out twists as they happen, or are you just one of those, you're along for the ride and you want to see what happens?
I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
Sometimes like I will figure things out pretty early. Like I use as an example, like The Woman in the Window. Nothing about that book surprised me, plot wise. Yet I loved that book because of the main character and the voice and how it was told. So I'm not one that if I see a twist coming and I predict it, I'm not like, oh, this book was a disappointment.
How about you, Abby? Are you along for the ride too?
I'm the same way, and it's so nice to hear someone else say that, because I feel like often I talk with people and they're all about trying to figure out the twist, and absolutely no, like that's totally fine. It's just not my style. Like I'm very much one of those readers where I just want to see what journey the author is going to take me on. And yeah, if I figure out the twist, it's not too much of a disappointment to me, because I like to see all the other stuff that surrounds the twist, But Riley, I can tell you that you are not a failure at writing twists. Always get me every single time. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't try to figure it out either. I'm along for the ride. And yeah, Riley's, they even knowing that they're coming, they surprise me every time. And like Abby, this is what we read all the time. So
yeah.
And this one was hard. These were difficult ones to come up with.
So Tabitha wants to know if you have other hobbies besides watching horror movies and writing.
I really don't have time for much else. No, I love to travel. Back when we could travel, I know we're like, what is travel? There's a lot of, I think people might know this about me, but like I am a huge Disney nerd. And so like this office, you can't quite see it, but this office is like all Disney. Like, oh, you can see sort of the shelves and like some, but like all the art. There's not a thing on this wall that is not like some kind of Disney related. And in fact, like just out of frame, like right over there is Walt Disney's autograph. And
Amazing.
I bought that as a present to myself when Final Girls became a bestseller, because my life had completely changed in such a short a period of time. And I was like, damn it, I deserve something. And so I got Walt Disney's autograph.
It's amazing.
Leslie wants to know how much influence you have over covers of the book. And somebody else in the chat also asked about the decision to make the cover glow in the dark too.
My publisher, Dutton Books and Penguin Random House, has an amazing, amazing art department. Mm-hmm. So they have done incredible things. Like I remember very vividly seeing the cover for Final Girls and just feeling like truly like I could drop dead right now and that would be okay, because nothing will top this moment, because this cover is so absolutely, utterly perfect for this book. And I love that, you know, my covers are sort of becoming known for like their design and their primary colors. And I think I saw someone in the chat like, you know, what's the next cover color going to be? And Abby and I have like had talks about that, where I think like before like the cover was revealed for Home Before Dark, I was like, hint, it's green.
Well, so you guys, like, sidebar, you know, like on my Instagram, I'm always matching like scarves to book covers. And I was like, you just have to give me like a shade, because I have to have a scarf ready to photograph the book. Like, you got to tell me. It's true. They're iconic. I love it.
And so like, but what's also great about them is like, they're very collaborative. Like they, you know, I will weigh in and be like, could we have maybe this, or could we do a little bit more with this? And they will listen, and that's really wonderful. And to their credit, the glow in the dark thing is so funny. Like so the deal is like, I did not know it was going to glow in the dark until, and I think my editor might disagree with me on this one, but I swear she did not tell me. But anyway, like I didn't know, but I think they thought that I knew. And so I was in New York City about to have lunch with one of the producers who's developing The Last Time I Lied for TV, or trying to develop it for TV. And so I was just waiting outside the restaurant, checking my email, and I get this email, and it's this video of the cover glowing in the dark. And my first thought was, oh, that's a really cool, fun effect that I guess one cover has that they're doing just for like promotion. And so I emailed, I'm like, this is cool. Are all of them going to glow in the dark? And they said, yes. And so then I started freaking out. Because I mean, I was born in the 70s, came of age in the 80s, which was the golden age of glow in the dark everything. And so this just, I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So when I met the producer for lunch, all I could talk about was how my cover was glowing in the dark. And I kept showing her the video. I'm like, look, you have to look at this. Like, how cool is this? I probably annoyed her so much. And then afterwards, like, you know, my editor sent me an email. She was like, yeah, I told you about this. And I'm like, no, because I'm pretty sure I would have remembered this. So I think maybe she did, and I just completely like went over my head. Like I wasn't reading the words right or something, but I truly didn't know until I saw the finished product that it was going to glow. And I love it.
Pretty much every staff member, the second the boxes came in, because we got some unsigned ones last week, just as our normal order, like took it immediately into the bathroom and closed the door so we could watch it glow in the dark.
Yes.
Absolutely. I did the same thing.
Amazing.
Yes.
So we have just a couple more. So lots of people are asking, what is your next book going to be?
Okay. Well, so it was announced today that, yes, I will be doing 3 more books for Dutton. And I'm so excited, starting with the next one coming 2021. And so, yes, it's so exciting. And I really can't say too much about it. But so all I'll say is, I'll give like the 6-word pitch. A girl, a killer, a car.
Awesome.
So excited. Oh my God.
Totally in.
We're on board.
A couple people also asked, who was your inspiration for Mrs. Pennyface?
Miss Pennyface was actually just sort of me playing around. Like, I loved Netflix's Haunting of Hill House version, and they had some really great ghosts in there. And so I really wanted to have my own kind of iconic ghost. And just for some reason, the idea of like Miss Pennyface, this ghost that like stands in the corner with pennies over her eyes, but can still see you, just really like, that really creeped me out. And I thought that I could have a lot of fun with ways like, how she appears and things like that. And so that was really just me messing around with, my imagination and just landing on a really creepy, cool idea that I don't think had ever been done before. And so.
It's a creepy imagination.
Yeah.
Britt asked, how long do you ruminate on a potential book idea before you start writing? Is there a lot of pre-writing or thinking?
There is a ton of thinking. Like, it's so weird. Like, a lot of my job is sitting, I'm going to try to move out it. Like, a lot of my job is sitting in that chair right there with a cup of coffee and a notebook and just thinking. Like, just, okay, so I have this idea. Is it feasible for a full-length book? What am I going to do with it? How am I going to develop it? Who's going to populate it? And so it is just days of sitting and drinking coffee. And someone peeking in the window would be like, he's not working, he's just sitting there. But it really is like, thought is work. And then I start to write things down, and then I usually kind of try to scribble down a first chapter, and then I kind of outline.
So I think we are right about time. Last question for both of you guys. What's the next movie you're watching this weekend?
We're watching nothing because it's 4th of July.
Oh,
we're taking a break, which is so anticlimactic. We're taking a break, but we'll be back at some point.
Back. Yeah. I know. I will be watching Hamilton. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Watching. I still know what you did last summer.
I'll be watching The Better Thing.
Undoubtedly, but I'm still going to watch I Know Summer. Hey, before we sign off, can I ask if I can take a screenshot of our computer screen right now? Because I think this is so cute. I'm going to hold up this book for posterity here. All right, ready, guys? 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. This has been a blast. Thanks for helping us dip our toe into the ticketed Zoom books. Riley, congratulations on the new book. We're so excited to share it with the world. As I mentioned, you guys, if your signed copies are either at the store right now getting packed up, or they're going to be at the store tomorrow, we're going to get stuff packed up as soon as we can, because everybody wants to read them. So keep your emails out for.
And thank you everyone for tuning in and for pre-ordering and getting your signed copies, and I hope you all love the book.
Thank you guys for letting me join in. This was a blast, and congratulations, Riley. I can't wait for everyone to read this book.
Thank you. And John, next year I will be there in person.
Yes. We'll have to have movie night when you come in. It'll be great.
Do I get an invite to this?
Of course. You have an open invite always. Y'all have a good night. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.